So I've been pretty critical of the way the government's handled the pandemic. I know that my guest here this evening, Peter Hitchens, has been very critical too, and certainly of lockdown and our liberties being taken away, and this assumption that somehow they own our freedom. They give us Freedom Day as if they own it in the first place. But it does nothing to the fiasco that has gone on in Australia. So I'm hoping now that we're going to Sydney. Yes, we are. Rowan Dean. Rowan, presenter of the remarkable Sky News Australia programme, The Outsiders, which I've been privileged to appear on, and the editor of The Spectator in Australia. Rowan, thanks for joining us here on GB News.
Nigel, so great to see you and to be with you, and congratulations on your terrific show. It's so good to Britain's very lucky to have you back.
Well, that's very sweet of you, but forget all that. I tell you something. What's been happening in Australia has not made much news in the UK. You can find it if you look for it, but it's not made much news. So, as I understand it, there have been about 9 deaths in the Sydney area attributed to COVID-19, and you're now living again under lockdown with police on the streets, or rather the army, I think, on the streets. Is that right?
That's correct, Nigel. We pulled off a remarkable feat here in Australia. It took us 200 years to go from being one of the most draconian penal colonies on the planet to a free nation of larrikin spirits, of free-speaking, anti-authoritarians. And in the last 18 months, Nigel, we've gone hurtling back. We are now back to where we belonged all to begin with, a penal colony. We have people snitching on their neighbours. We have people terrified if you're not wearing a mask. We have police grabbing little old ladies or women in pyjamas and handcuffing them just because they posted something on Facebook. We've got drones over our beaches making sure that people aren't sitting there, maybe, having a picnic on the beach like they used to without wearing a mask. Nigel, it is the most extraordinary thing. And as you say, we've got everything. We've got the pandemic, but we don't actually have COVID. Not properly. We've had less than 1,000 people die. You've had 130,000 people die. We've had fewer than 1,000 people die, and yet we have the most authoritarian, draconian measures probably on the planet. Even the Chinese, Nigel, are now saying we're too strict.
And yet, in Sydney, it would appear that despite this draconian lockdown being back in place, that cases are still rising. But, Rowan, I must ask you this. Perhaps the biggest success of Brexit so far is that we weren't part of the European Medicines Agency. We made our own decisions on the vaccine, on procurement, and we've had a real, in many ways, one of the world's leading vaccine rollouts. Now we've got 3/4 of the population have had a vaccine. And yet, I read the figures today from Australia, you're still only at 17% of people that have been vaccinated. Now, is this reluctance to take the vaccine, or is it just government incompetence on a huge scale?
It's both. And the Morrison government put all their backed the AstraZeneca vaccine and bought tons and tons of that. And then right at the last moment, just as they were about to roll it out, we had various state chief health medical officers saying, oh, no, don't take AstraZeneca. We don't want young people to take that. They might get blood clots and die. We'd rather they take a risk of COVID. So the poor old Australian punter who's never really understood what COVID is about because we have so few cases and so few viruses here because we shut the borders so early, they're going, well, hang on, what is it? Should I be taking this? Should I be taking that? So there's this massive vaccine hesitancy. Yeah. At the same time, Nigel, we have all these petty premiers rushing around saying, oh, I want more vaccine, I want less vaccine, you can't take this. The people are completely confused, Nigel.
The whole thing, I thought our leadership was bad, but goodness gracious me. And finally, Rowan, I've been down to Australia a couple of times in the last few years, and I've met you both times. I've been down and appeared on your programme and spoken at a Spectator event, and we might have even had a drink together. It's possible. When will I be allowed back into Australia, do you think?
Well, this is the sad thing, Nigel. Probably not for years to come, because we have this mad zero COVID strategy which is about as achievable as net zero emissions. We're aiming for zero COVID in our penal colony. I don't think we'll ever get there. And in the meantime, people are going, well, I don't want to take the vaccine. So I think it'll be a long time between drinks, as they say, Nigel, which is our loss, because we love having you down here.
Thank you very much, Rowan, for joining us. That was Rowan Dean, Sky News host from Australia. Very early in the morning for him, 4:30 in the morning, but just telling us what an absolute fiasco things are down under.